lockdowns are loosened, how can countries prevent a second wave of infections? We speak to a health expert. With many countries in the world debating how best to end lockdown and allow shops and offices to reopen, the main worry is still the virus could spread again, leading to a so-called second wave of infections. Dr Eleanor Murray is Assistant Professor of Epidemiology at Boston University.
Right now, we're seeing a lot of countries, a lot of regions are starting to flatten off the increase in cases, but we're still at a situation where in most countries, the number of cases that are active now is as high as it's ever been. And so we're really not finished with the first wave yet.
So what are your worries about countries beginning to open up like this?
So I think if we see people opening up and not changing their behavior from what life was like in February or early March, then what we expect is that we'll just sort of take off on that same trajectory again, except now instead of starting from a handful of cases in any given city or region, we're going to be starting from hundreds or thousands of cases. And I think that's the worst case scenario, that we just sort of take back off on that exponential trajectory. There are lots of things we can kind of put in place to limit that, to try to open up safely. But I think that's the thing that we're most worried about seeing.
Because given that economies shut down with what in comparison is a handful of cases, another wave could be really, really, really serious.
Yes, exactly. And it would be, not even really a second wave, but just a sort of continuation of this first wave, which hasn't really ended.
You have a particular concern, I think, and this was interesting but very worrying, about air conditioning.
So, yeah, I think this is something that we're going to need to look into more and think about as we head into the summer in a lot of regions of the globe. There was a report in early March from China of families dining at a restaurant where one of the individuals was pre-symptomatic and, from what they could figure out, transmitted infection to up to 10 other individuals in the restaurant, but only those who were seated along the path of the air conditioner from that first initial case. And so this does suggest that even though we believe that SARS-CoV-2 is spread by droplets, and those typically don't travel more than about 2 meters. When we have a situation like a strong air conditioning system blowing, that can potentially spread up to maybe 3 or 4 meters, which is about the distance that the infection might have spread in this restaurant setting. And so we're going to need to think very carefully about how and when to operate air conditioners safely in indoor settings.
If you don't mind, just very briefly, in a form that we could remember, is there one particular thing that you don't do or do that you'd recommend?
So I think I personally have been avoiding public transit. I'm in Boston. The public transit system here can get very crowded. So that's something I've been avoiding. I think if that's something that people can do, it's probably a good idea to avoid, because anywhere where you're going to be crowded in with people, it's going to be really hard to avoid transmission if anyone around you is infected.
Dr. Eleanor Murray at Boston University.